He's
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Jefferson County Public Utility District Number 1 Board of Commissioners meeting on Tuesday, December 12th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The first order of business is to ascertain that we have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. I am Kenneth Collins, Commissioner for District 2, and for the rest of the month of December, Chair of the Board.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1.
Dan, are you muted?
Looks like Dan is there. Dan is present, but his internet is temporarily frozen.
Commissioner for District 3, Dan Tupper. I'm going to have internet. You can see it.
Hey, Dan, why don't you try turning off your video, see if that helps.
Does that make it better?
We can hear you talk.
How about
There you
now?
are.
Yeah, I think that's
that-
better.
I think a little better. Yeah, thank you. So Jefferson,
Okay.
Jefferson PUD is offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to indicate your desire to speak. Item 2 on our agenda is approval of the agenda itself. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
I'm okay with it.
Commissioner, I would like to make a change.
Yes, please go ahead.
We're going to pull the procurement manual revision and resolution from the agenda. We are going to have Moss Adams introduce a couple new policies, not for anything. This is a very first touch, but we're taking advantage of the Moss Adams being here, even though we're not doing the procurement manual. So we would like to make that change, Commissioner.
Thank you. Any other changes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
I will move that we approve the modified agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve this afternoon's agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The agenda is approved. The third item on our agenda is public comment. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the chair and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the chair, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. So at this point, I would like to open the period for public comment. Please indicate if you have a desire to speak at this time.
And Ken, just so you know, there's nobody in the room here. No.
Thank
public.
you. And I'm not seeing at this moment anyone from the public online who would like to speak. So going once, going twice, we're moving on. Item 4 on the agenda is the Moss Adams policy presentation.
And Ken, I'm going to just take a minute once again, thank Moss Adams. Chelsea has worked with us on a lot of these policy issues. They've done us a great job. So we really want to have a shout out for Moss Adams. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, with that, I am going to share my screen. I do have a presentation. All right, I trust that you all can see my screen. Let me know if you can't.
We
But
can.
okay, wonderful, wonderful. But as Kevin said, I'm Chelsea Ritchie. I'm with Moss Adams. I'm a senior manager. One of my main practice lines is developing policies and procedures really around the financial realm. I'm joined today with also Nia. He is a senior and helped develop, write some of these policies. And we're missing a team member today. He is on vacation, lucky guy. But Andrew Camellis, he's a manager and really plays an instrumental part of developing policies and procedures for many clients. So with that, I wanted to kind of go over the 3-step approach that we've been doing. This is something that's not new to you all. When I presented the first time around the procurement policy, it's going to be the same methodology, but I think it's really important to showcase the work and everything that goes into these policies and procedures. So with each different policy and procedure that we have been contracted to go over with Jefferson PUD, we conduct a current state assessment. So what does that mean? We're really performing interviews specifically with Kevin and Mike, looking at any relevant documentation. So purchase, any forms, anything that would help us understand the current processes that are taking place. We also assess, what's working well and really, what's not working well. So we get that feedback from Kevin and Mike, and we also do our own assessment on this. So part of, our expertise is we know what internal controls need to be had in these different areas. And so we can offer management some advice on really what would be a good internal control to have in place in certain areas, as well as segregation of duties. And, that's really important, especially with a, small shop per se, as Jefferson PUD, when there's not a ton of people, we want to make sure that there's still safeguards in place. So when we provide these drafts of policies and procedures, to our clients, we'll have recommendations and they can take those or leave those. Definitely I have clients that say, this is not going to work for us, Chelsea, and that's okay. But part of our, bread and butter, like I said, is providing those recommendations. We'll make sure that they're in line with laws, regulations, and implementing those best practices when possible. And so that's really what comes into item number 3 of our approach. That's when we come up with that draft policy and procedure. So all of these policies and procedures are always, reviewed with management first. Usually we go back and forth, make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on. There's going to be edits, and then, like today, Kevin and Mike wanted us to present just an initial buy-off showing you what we're doing right now with policies and procedures. So today we're going to go over 4 different policies: credit cards, contract management, budget management, and accounts payable. So these are, ones that we've identified that really was something that was a need for JPUD, as well as something that was complemented in the procurement manual that we, initially talked about, I think this summer. So with that, I trust that you all have been able to review the policies. This is your first time. So if you haven't had a chance to have a full in-depth look and review of these policies, that's okay. But I did want to provide just some key changes and observations for each of these areas, just so that you guys are aware, especially when you review. We welcome these questions and comments, but wanted to kind of go over some stuff. So the first one I'm going to go over is the credit card policy and procedure. So looking at this one, there was two main changes or observations I wanted to make sure that you highlight for you all to make sure that you are aware. So one is that credit card purchases greater than or equal to $250 must be supported by a properly approved purchase requisition. Now, this was, this was something that we talked with management about. Typically we would see maybe this limit go higher. But management thought that really, something around, greater than or equal to $250 needed to be approved with that purchase order. The other thing is talking about commissioner credit card. So this was a big one for you all. So the commissioner credit card expenses and supporting documentation is now going to be reviewed by the general manager or finance director. So previously, you all would have a different commissioner would perform this review, and really this should be brought into management. This is a management function. This is Jefferson PUD funds. So, we're taking off the heat from you all. You guys don't have to review each other's anymore. We're going to put that onto management.
Hey, Chelsea, I have a question.
Absolutely.
So the credit card purchases greater or equal to $250 requiring a properly approved purchase requisition, would that apply to commissioners going to conferences where their hotel stays and other expenses exceed $250? Do we have to get pre-approval for that, or does that really not apply?
So I think that's going to go more into your travel and expense policy and procedure. So there's going to be some different caveats specifically around travel that you will see down the road. So I think this is really for expenses like meals, some, supplies, that sort of thing. And I saw, Kevin, I saw you shaking your head. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate anything more on that. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. We have kind of segregated some policies for commissioners and then for staff. There are, as there are now, the commissioners have a different process for all of this than staff does. Staff has to get some approvals. Commissioners don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if we're staying someplace, we can't get a purchase requisition not knowing until after the stay how much it's for.
Exactly. And so I think that's going to go into your travel and expense policy. So
Yeah.
really, at least we would expect that JPUD would know, when you all are on travel and whatnot. And so there is different, controls and stuff in place specifically around travel. So that is a very good point to highlight.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I don't see anything, so I'm going to move forward and go over contract management policies and procedures. So as you'll see, there were some highlights, a few more highlights that I wanted for you all to see when you are reviewing these policies and procedures. So the biggest one here is, talking with Kevin, there's going to be development of a new role, so a contract specialist. And so you'll see that word throughout that policy and procedure. So this role would be directly responsible for assisting the general manager in those day-to-day contracting related responsibilities. As you may or may not be aware, the general manager currently has a ton of responsibility on these contracts. So, deploying another role into this will be really helpful to make sure that those specific day-to-day responsibilities are taken care of. Another big one is segregating tracking duties between the finance department and lead engineers. So this was kind of mixed together. And so we really wanted to make sure that we highlighted each department, so the lead engineers as well as the finance department, and make sure that those specific roles were clearly defined. We also developed a change order threshold that will require the general manager's review and approval for contract charges that exceed the original contract amount by $10,000 or 10% more, or 10% of the actual contract amount. With this policy and procedure, we also developed a contract extension procedure for contracts that expire before completion. So this was something that was really kind of word of mouth right now. And so we wanted to make sure that this was something that was highlighted throughout that policy. And another big thing that we did around this was around record keeping. So record keeping of contracts, that will now be the responsibility of that new role that I was discussing earlier, the contract specialist. And that will be with the lead, with the also the assistance of, lead engineers, and that will all be done in a contract tracking workbook. And another big thing around those record keeping policies, we have a whole section of record keeping policies and procedures within the contract management policy and procedure. And this was really updated to make sure that we complied with Washington state law. So there will be references to that. Yes, I see a hand up, Daniel.
Yes, this is a question for Kevin. I think the new role, it says, of contract specialist, is it, let's clarify, are we going to add this duty to an existing employee, or do you view this as going to be a new complete employee that will have this duty?
Our hope is to add it to an existing employee. We have an employee that's kind of doing this now, but that would just be a broader scope of duties, Dan.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions or comments from initial view of that contract management policy and procedure? Like I said, I know that there probably will be more questions and comments later down the line, but these are just some key highlights that we wanted to present to you all today. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go into the budget management policy and procedure. So two things here. Budget amendments greater than 10% of the original budgeted amount will now require your approval. So prior to this, the board approval of amendments was not required, but really making sure that everyone's aligned, especially when there is a 10%, I think it is important for you all to be aware of those changes. The next thing is that, budget hearings for the public criteria is compliant with Washington law. I know that was kind of a gray area before. I don't think that you guys were not doing that, but we wanted to make sure that that was clearly visible within this policy. Any questions or comments on budget management? Okay. All right, well, last but not least is accounts payable. So some key changes for this one and some observations to highlight for you all during your review. So the JPUD vendor listing will now be required to be reviewed annually. And this is really to make sure that, any inactive vendors are removed, and the list of employees system access to manage these vendors are only authorized to those whose jobs duties require it. And this is just kind of some due diligence, making sure, and everything is good. There is risk that when you don't review that vendor listing, through years to come, there could be, potential fraud. And it's always a good idea to make sure that the employee access list is reviewed, timely. This is a really heavy area. People were making payments on JPUD's, behalf. So this is something that, we really encourage clients to do. We also developed a return and refund policy and procedure to align with JPUD's procurement policy. So, when we bring that one back to you all, the JPUD or the procurement policy and procedures, there will be a reference. You probably remember this, or I'm scratching your head thinking, I can't remember you even ever talking to us, but we did have a reference about return and refund policies. And so this is talking about how that will be done on the payment side for accounts payable. The third thing, so the JPUD's AP clerk will now be responsible for determining if vendors may be subject to the IRS's 1099 reporting requirements. really making sure that they prepare, review, and submit all of vendors' 1099s, timely, accurately, what that process is. So we have highlighted that and kind of gone by the step of those. And last but not least, the thing I wanted to highlight around this was the year-end close procedures. So we now are going to include a review of all invoices at year end and determine how to properly accrue those expenses. This is really going to be primarily based on shipping terms, and this is a huge accounting, phenomenon that every, finance department goes through every end of year. So we talk about the shipping terms, or the periods of services, and that will help determine, which of those, expenses need to be accrued and what doesn't. Any questions? I know that's a lot of information. Yes, Daniel.
So thank you. This has been very helpful, Chelsea, from you and your team. A question for Kevin and Mike again. As memory serves, I think when we had our state accountability audit, we didn't have any findings, if I remember correctly, and this stuff should all help us in those departments, along those lines. Is there some other things that we're still working on that we are thinking about along that auditing issues that are going to be coming forward? Is this going to?
So Dan, I think I got most of what you were saying.
Come through, Kevin or Mike?
Yeah, Kevin, Dan, this is Mike. So I think I got most of what you were saying there. This is just the first handful of policies that Moss Adams has been working on for us. We're going to just bring them in small batches to the board. We don't want to overwhelm the board because I don't remember how many we got out there working that Chelsea, Andrew, and Nia now are working on for us that are just going to help make us better, help us because we didn't have any accountability audit findings. We haven't had any for a number of years now, but this just helps make sure everybody understands a little bit easier and can follow everything and more in line. And so this is just a first time. After the first year, there are going to be more times that Chelsea and her team will be here presenting 3 or 4 on items at a time until we get everything approved. Like I said, I don't remember how many policies that they're helping us write, either rewrite or they're writing brand new ones. Some of these we have never had policies on before. We've done them, but we've never had a written policy. So we're now putting it in writing on what we should be doing. So there is no question. So I hope that
Thanks
answered.
for the overview, Mike. You caught what I was looking.
Okay. So yeah.
I have a question. So we're kind of delaying the adoption of these procedures. Is that in any way holding up the business that the PUD has to do?
No, so we're not holding up anything. We're just we didn't want to overwhelm the board with so many policies at one time. It's given Chelsea and her team time to really dive into these good policies for us. So it's not affecting anything that we're doing. It's just making us better aligned.
Okay. And then I have a question for Chelsea too. So would you say that what's being proposed is an update of existing policies that the PUD had to make them compliant with best practices in state law? Or would you say that you took some other jurisdictions' policies and is this an organic evolution of policies we already had, or is this kind of policies based on some other organizations' best procedures?
Yeah, I would say, so it really, it's never based off of anybody else's policies and procedures. So that is something that I always get super fired up about. And I'm very passionate about that. Moss Adams, we make sure that each policy and procedure is specifically for, the organization that we're contracted with. But, a lot of the policies, just talking with Mike and Kevin, this is stuff that's currently happening. So, this is how their day-to-day actions are. There were, some instances where, like I mentioned earlier, you know, we really wanted to beef up to make sure that it was very clear that we were in compliant with record keeping Washington, you know, laws and regulations. So, you know, we said, you know, hey, Mike and Kevin, we would suggest, you know, we need to put this area in. But you know, but then, you know, they agreed that that was something that they were willing, you know, they understood the importance, and it was something that, you know, JPUD could keep doing on their own. So does that help answer? It's kind of a mix of both. You know, we're understanding currently what they're doing, and then, you know, my team will come in and say, okay, how could they do this better? What mechanisms could we, you know, suggest to them to make processes run more smoothly, make sure that they're, you know, aligned with laws and regulations, and also make sure that, you know, segregation of duty is in place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It sounds like you got familiar with how Jefferson PUD does things
Exactly.
and researched what's the best practices in current laws, and you're basing the procurement manual on both those things.
Absolutely. Yes. As well as these other policies. Yep.
Well, before they go, I just want to say, tell Chelsea and her team, thank you for everything they've done. I mean, there's been a lot of work back and forth on these, and we appreciate everything that they're doing for them. I think that just going to make us better aligned, just help us go back into the future even better. And so, I would ask Chelsea if you could send me the presentation from today, so we can update our packet with the policies now that we've talked about them in the meeting. We'll get them up, and with your presentation, we'll update our agenda packet on our website.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if there's any questions by any of the commissioners, I'm sure this is what you all will be doing during your holidays, is reading these policies. I would expect nothing less. So if there is any
Yeah, you
questions.
can count on that.
Yeah, thank you. I knew it. I was hoping someone would get the joke, but but if there is any questions, you know, definitely.
Kevin, I hear that.
Definitely, Mike, please share, you know, my email address, and, you know, we would be happy, Moss Adams would be happy to, you know, address any questions if it's outside of a Board of Commissioners meeting.
Will do. Thank you.
So thank you for the presentation. That was very helpful, and we will have additional communication after the holidays.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
The next item on the agenda, item number 5, is a closed session for RCW 42.30.140, Section 4, subsection B, having to do with union negotiations. Mr. Street, approximately how much time do we want to allocate?
30 minutes.
Okay.
And would you like me to? Yeah, yes. Oh. The break.
Yeah, they're doing a 5-minute transition.
We have now concluded our closed session having to do with union negotiations. And the next item on our agenda is manager and staff reports. Mr. Street.
Okay, I will get started. Hold on. Okay, I think I've got my phone set right. I'm going to have Mike Bailey talk a little bit about the audit that's being done by the state. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so we are starting, the state auditor's office has reached out. They're in the process of starting our 2022 accountability audit. They're just in the planning process right now. So, gonna have that going on. So just wanted to let the commissioners know that we are in that process. There'll be some different We'll be inviting you to a couple different meetings, having an exit sometime after the first of the year with them, but just wanted to let them know. And while we're here, Ken, I'll reach out, I'll email you, but we need to set up a risk assessment with you as the president of the board. So I'll
Sure.
again, so we can get that set up with them.
Mhm.
But yeah, just wanted to just let the board know that are looking at doing our 2022 accountability audit right now. And then we have BSGM will be here at the end of January to do our 2023 financial audit. So got a couple of different working on right now. So just to keep the board informed of what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And now we're gonna give Will a few minutes to give us a cost update for the grant areas and go over a couple items that we need to review with the board. Are you ready, Will?
Yep. As you know, Kevin and I went to Kansas City to review the final bid package and costs with our engineer, Finley Engineering, for the combined construction project for Olympic Fiber Corridor and the In-Betweens projects. We are combining the two grants and putting them into one underground construction package that we hope to bring to the board to review very soon. In fact, we'll have to talk about that after this update. We've been working closely with Finley for, months now, trying to keep costs down and come up with a design that works best for the long term and works best for the district's needs in the short term of being able to build in an affordable process that complies with all the right-of-ways and all the other issues that are going forward. We received an engineer's estimate of $11.3 million for the bid package to do the underground work for Olympic Fiber Corridor and the in-betweens. That will connect everybody from Quilcene up to Gardner and up through Chimicum. The underground portion will cover the buried fiber to the homes, and all of the splicing. It will be one complete package. Our goal is to try to have that advertised by December 20th with a bid opening of the 31st. In reviewing the total costs of the project, we believe that we are going to be over budget on the combined projects. We will be over budget between $2.3 and $3.3 million for construction, or for the entire project, including construction.
And what's the grant?
The grant is, the combined grant amount is 18.1 or $2 million. Let me pull that back up. And the total cost with the new construction estimates will be over 20 million.
So it's like around 15% or between 10 and 15% over
Yep.
the original. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been researching what we can do. Our first step was try to work with the engineers to reduce costs and work with the state and the county to be able to reduce some of the work that we'd have to do. We've done all that. To cover the overage, I've been in communication with the Public Works Board and the State Broadband Office, as well as the NTIA. The Public Works Board right now has an open low interest loan application. It's 0.42% interest, as we used for our Port Townsend business project, 15-year payback. And the two agencies have talked, and we would be eligible to apply for the loan only to cover that overage as our cash contribution to the project.
That's a great interest rate.
Yep.
0.4%. I don't know where you're gonna get that.
So we're looking forward, we're looking at that. And I'm also, because the construction estimates that we used to do this project were done, the original numbers came from late 2020. We applied for this in mid 2021. We used the similar numbers for our Jefferson North project. I am looking at a loan package to cover potential overages in Jefferson North as well. Grants following that have more recent numbers, but the cycle for the loan application closes January 4th. It will be a bit of work for myself and some others to get that completed in time. It's a competitive loan application. It's kind of first come, first served, so there's no guarantee we will get it. But we're looking at moving in that direction.
So Will, I had a follow-up question. I see somebody else's hand up there too, but
Joel, would you like to go ahead?
Jeff, if you want to
Sure.
continue, I mean,
so
I
my,
can go after you.
yeah, thank you. My question is, presuming then we have to take some additional loans out to cover these projects, would the repayment of those loans be kind of folded in the idea of the annual budget process for broadband, that we'd be looking at them as a business paying those back over 15 years? Or is that kind of a policy decision to be made by the commissioners when it's budget time or Kevin's budget?
It would be the same as the other loans that we've taken out, would be paid by the broadband revenues.
Okay, so the idea would, it would be covered by the business model. would be
Yep,
the idea.
and,
Okay.
and there's a possible 2-year deferral of payments, and there's definitely a 1-year, the first year is interest only. You pay annually on these loans rather than monthly.
Okay, so all the rates we set and everything we do, we would be looking at this as part of the cost of doing business.
Correct.
Okay.
And I had Doug Dawson do a quick review of the business plan by adding in this loan this afternoon. And we had originally projected a 4-year payback till we break even. If we maintain the same take rate, average about 65%, it would extend the payback or the break-even rate from 4 years to 6.5 years. But if we exceed 65%, which I think we are likely to do, that shortens that break-even time again. So the clear message is we just need to connect the customers.
So,
Good.
Mr. Paisner, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does the securing of a loan limit our ability to secure additional grant funds from NTIA or anybody else?
I don't know. It would be, again, a revenue loan. And we're going to have to work through a couple of those issues. I have a call with the Public Works Board head on Thursday, so we can look into that.
Joel, just to follow up, are you thinking that it would somehow affect our credit rating, or what is your thought?
No, my thought is that because I have to imagine that just about every system out there who got a grant was similar to ours. And when the numbers, I have another client who ran into the same exact issue, and the estimate was 50-something thousand a mile, and it went up to 85,000 a mile, and all of a sudden, so the question is, are you limited then from seeking additional grant funds to fill back in for that once you secure a loan?
We cannot seek additional grant funds for this area. And one of the options we looked at was reducing, cutting back the number of customers that we were going to connect. NTI was not favorable of that. So we would just reduce the scope that way. But because this is the Public Works Board loan is funded through the state, it's a revolving fund. It's state funding, so it's eligible for.
Commissioner Tupper?
So I moved in the room. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll see if maybe this helps. So if what I'm hearing correctly is on this first 2 grants that I'm hearing about, so debt repayment schedule is going to have to change, and that I assume is going to be spread over all broadband customers, not just the customers in that particular grant area. If I'm hearing this correctly, that's what's kind of being proposed. But this is just the first one out the gate. I would expect we're going to run into this with all the other grants as well. At what point does the cumulative amount of debt really, even if we get to 65% of takings play out, what is kind of our maximum amount of debt that the broadband division can take before rates are going to become intolerable?
We're going to work with Doug after the new year. We can explore some of those scenarios. But these are our two oldest. We had almost a 2-year delay between application and contract approval. The two of the NTIA sub awardees in our group have already had to raise their budget for the same issues, and they were able to get some of the SLAC money available from the state. Unfortunately, we were later coming to the table, so it wasn't available for us.
So, Will, it sounds like what you're saying too is because these are older projects, they're being more affected by the cost increases, and that more recent that we shouldn't see this continue with more recent applications. The numbers should get better as we go along. Is that what you're saying?
I think Kevin's got his hand up because I think he wants to answer this one.
Okay.
Yeah, all I was gonna say is, moving forward, we do have better numbers, but we also are dialing in better on our engineering design. We have some things in place that we believe on these other grants will save us money on the design and building in those areas. So, I believe this is not across the board. Every grant is going to be over budget. I think it's going to take a heck of a lot of work by PUD staff to get these under control. And they may be over budget, but there's, again, many, many things we can do to reduce that overall cost.
So what is the primary driver of the cost overrun? Is that engineering?
No, construction labor.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should say, part of our strategy for seeking loan funding is that we would actually replace our cash matches that we pledged with the loan. So that will help us as well for cash flow.
Mhm.
And that's all I have. We're getting closer to energizing our the equipment and control hut in Quilcene at the substation. We're looking at plans to connect our first customers beginning end of January. We ran into a small hurdle with BPA that we're working through via our leased fiber. But all those plans are on track. We're excited.
Thank you. Any additional staff reports?
I'm going to give a real quick update. Our Ford Lightning is in. We have a small charging unit at Auto Street. We are, as we talked about last time, going to encourage staff to take the truck out and use it for a little bit before we assign it to a crew. Trying to encourage people that have never driven an electric vehicle, to test drive it, use it. So, we're excited to have it. It's new. It's our first electric vehicle, so everyone's kind of chomping at the bit to drive it around a little bit. So, and that is the end of manager's report.
I had a question, Kevin. And this is a little awkward because it's about the October financial report, which is in the consent agenda, but I don't know how else I can get it answered because we haven't acted on consent agenda yet. And it's just a question about, and we may have talked about this, but it's about the non-operating margins for this year on electric and like 8.2 million. And I'm just kind of curious if that is including, because it just results in this really odd number of, 11.9 million or whatever of net contribution to the PUD, and the revenue was like 3.5 million, and then we've got this big non-operating margin, and it's on page 78 of the packet. But I'm just wondering, is that like grants for broadband, or how come we've got this massive big number? And Mike's kind of nodding there.
So we'll let Mike jump in.
On this one. Yes, it is because the grant proceeds that we do, when we do get reimbursed by state regulations, we have to record them as revenue.
Okay.
So they are being recorded. So for the next few years till we're done with the grants, we're gonna see that high level of non-operating margins other.
Okay, just want to make sure that's on the record somewhere so that when people
Yep.
are like, you guys have been making all this money, how
Yeah,
come you're,
it does make it look like we're making a lot of money, but that money is actually being reimbursing us for the money we're spending out on the
yeah,
grants.
and it's
So,
passing right back through to projects.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So item 7 on our agenda is commissioner reports. Commissioner Tupper, would you like to lead off?
I'll give it a shot. Just let me know if it's not working. Did you hear that?
Yeah, just
Yes.
talk kind of slow, because then if there's a gap, we get hopefully fewer words lost.
Yeah, because my screen is frozen. You're all very idle at the moment, so.
We can hear you.
And I
okay.
keep getting drops. So here we go. I'll keep it simple. I'll just do the basic, where I showed up. I won't get into too much detail. Maybe Kevin can fill in if you guys have any questions on some of it. I met with Kevin Street on November 22nd. I attended the Jefferson County Public Infrastructure Fund Board meeting on the 28th. I met with Kevin again on the 1st. I attended the PPC Forum for Utility Elected Leaders on December 6th. I exited that Zoom meeting and actually went in and physically attended the transit ribbon cutting at Haynes Place in Port Townsend for their new Gillig electric bus, which I hear our engineering department had some help, and they got some props for that, for helping out with that. After the ribbon cutting, I attended our BOC special meeting on our new procurement manual. I attended the EDC Team Jefferson board meeting on December 7th. EDC is revamping its website with the assistance of a consultant, so you can go check that out. They're also contemplating adding one new board position for a member at large, more detail January, where that'll probably get talked about with other topics. I will attend the NOAA annual meeting tomorrow, December 17th. I'm in Spokane right now. I'll attend the PIF board meeting just to finalize the projects and the funding that have been put forward. I meet with Kevin on the. That concludes my.
Thank you. Commissioner Randall?
Sure, I'll go. Mine's pretty short too. Met with the manager Kevin Street on November 29th. On December 6th and 7th, Energy Northwest had a executive board meeting, and I zoomed into that one. There was some really interesting presentations. At the very beginning, the CEO, Bob Schutz, reported a little bit more on the NuScale project in Idaho that is ending. It's called the UAMPS project for, what's the name of those small modular nukes? There we go.
Yeah.
He kind of listed 3 issues that caused that project to have problems. One of them was that transportation to the site was limited They didn't have a way to barge anything there, and the roads and bridges were more rural than the Energy Northwest site. And they can also barge to the Energy Northwest site, so they feel that's a better site. Transmission of getting power out of that area was really limited. And I don't know that they know how limited it is out of the Energy Northwest site, but that was an issue. And then finally, the utilities that signed up to be off-takers to take the power were just smaller than what Energy Northwest hopes to line up. So that was kind of interesting. And then the big thing for me out of the meeting was they had a representative from Puget Sound Energy there, and they were talking about the potential partnership between Puget Sound Energy and Energy Northwest on a NuScale small modular nuclear plant. So Greg Cullen initially went to the PSC board and gave a formal presentation, and that was positively received by the PSC board. And then the individual who was presenting, I'm sorry, I don't have his name here. He said, he explained why PSC might be interested in this. And he said that PSC right now is looking for reasonably priced carbon-free resources. He just called them reasonable carbon-free resources. And that the PSC board and the CEO chose not to fight Washington State's carbon-free requirements, but rather to lean into the challenge. Their load growth is been about 2% a year, so they're growing pretty fast. And he gave one example that electric vehicles right now are about 1% of their load today, but they expect that to grow to 10% by 2030 and 20% by 2040. And of course, the further out you go, the harder it is to know that. But they expect aggressive growth with EVs. They are going to have to retire, or they were scheduled to retire 750 megawatts of coal-fired power by 2025, and they need to acquire significant amounts of clean power by 2030. On another issue, the PSC is pro regional transmission authority. So he just said that they support that. And that getting back to the small modular nuke, they're really concerned about reliability on their system. And they're looking for 3 solutions. One is alternative fuels, including hydrogen. One is possible investment in a small modular nuclear project. And the third is long-term energy storage. The challenges they see for PSC participating in the small modular nukes is, from what they've seen so far in basically the whole industry, is really a lack of specific information on costs and timelines, and how the costs and timelines for energy for a small modular nuclear plant compare to other available types of resources. So they were just, he was explaining, as a corporate entity, these are the challenges we're going to have in getting involved in this. PSC is evaluating an early funding agreement with Energy Northwest. They are working, PSC also supports working with key legislators to encourage partial state funding for this project. And if PSC partners on a small modular nuke, they are not likely to want to be an owner. They are more likely interested in being an off-taker of power. Their board is concerned about the risk of the project. They feel it is fair that the state and the federal government should even further help reduce the risk of emerging technology, the cost. So they're wanting to lobby to get even more assistance than has already been committed to help on these projects. And they see the primary risk as cost overruns on the small modular nuke plant. And he just said the bottom line is, we're looking at like $1.5 billion to get this project up and running, and seeing no return on investment for 7 years. That's really hard to swallow. So anyway, it was a really interesting presentation, and Energy Northwest is working with them, and again, the state, to try and keep things moving. But it's serious, and it was interesting to hear the details. On the 7th, I participated in the North Olympic Development Council's final board meeting of the year. The head of NODC, Karen Affeld, gave a nice report. And I guess in summary, what's happening now with the North Olympic Development Council is they've really been effective at convening regional dialogues on energy resiliency and climate change adaptation. and they've been applying for and receiving funding for planning work for Jefferson and Clallam counties to continue this work of looking at how do we improve our energy resiliency and how do we prepare for climate change adaptation. They've effectively brought in the Northwest National Labs into that process, and the tribes have been brought in and are participating in that process. I look at the NODC as a lot like doing for the region, a lot like what the Intergovernmental Council is doing in Jefferson County. It's bringing together the cities, the counties, the utilities, the tribes, state agency personnel, and federal folks, as well as keeping the federal congressional leaders apprised at what we're doing. And I think it's really effective, and it's a good investment of our time and the little bit of money that we kick into their process. And lastly, we talked about that the cities and counties all have to do growth management planning updates in the next 2 years, that the NODC makes sure that they're feeding information into that process. And then looking forward, I plan to participate in the NOAANET meeting tomorrow via Zoom, and I have a climate action committee meeting that day also. And that's all I had on my calendar that I could report. So that's my report.
Thank you. On the 29th of November, I had a meeting with the general manager and came out to put my initials on a document. I attended a meeting the following day at Cape George. We're in discussions with a special committee of Cape George residents. They're exploring whether they would like the PUD to take over the management of their water system. We provided a proposal to them, which had gone before our Board of Commissioners a few months back, and we got a list of questions back from them. So it remains to be seen as to whether they are willing to go for increased costs in order to trade that off against full compliance with the state regulations in terms of who gets to monitor the system, add chemicals, and basically ensure that everything is according to code. So there will be further discussions between the PUD and that committee. On the 1st, I had another meeting with the general manager. On the 11th, I participated in a report from the state auditor's office. It was an accountability audit of PERMs. Bottom line is there were no deficiencies, no areas of non-compliance, so it was a totally clean audit. The next audit will be done in 2024. The areas covered were accounts payable, the IT security policies, the self-insurance for property liability and health and welfare, whether they were in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, and their overall financial condition. Again, it was a clean audit, and the last item that they covered was that for the following year, they're anticipating a cost just under $30,000 to the state to be audited again. Had a meeting on the earlier today with the general manager. We have on the calendar a meeting with Cape George on the 18th. I have on my calendar a meeting with the general manager on the 19th and on the 29th, and that will, I think, close out the year. So if there are no questions, we can move on to approval of the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Consent agenda has been approved. On my agenda, item 9, old business, there is nothing listed. Similarly, Commissioner Tupper, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wondered if you were able to review legal counsel's comments about the no net bylaws. Question on that?
Was that understood? Because it came through garbled.
Yeah, I think Dan is talking about Joel's email regarding the proposed NOAA bylaws. And I think the discussion is planned to be at the February NOAA meeting.
Yeah, is there any discussion we need on that, or?
I haven't had a
Yeah,
chance.
was there any questions or, any direction?
Why don't we put that on the agenda for our first meeting in January?
Sounds good. Sorry about connect.
I think that makes sense.
Good. So similarly, we do not have anything on the agenda under new business. And item 11 on the agenda. Oh, Kevin, go ahead, please.
We would like to take this opportunity to look at the commissioner's calendar. As Will discussed a little bit earlier, we would need a special board meeting to review the contract that's being reviewed by the state now on bidding out the Olympic Fiber Corridor bid package. Is there a chance that we could tentatively schedule a meeting for Monday? Anytime? And it would be a short meeting.
I'm totally open on Monday.
Monday's not good for me. How short a meeting, Kevin? If are we talking about an hour?
Or less, an hour meeting, yes.
Okay, 10 o'clock on Monday?
Works for me.
It'd have to be late in the day for me.
Mm.
If Monday doesn't work, how does Tuesday look?
Tuesday's much better for me.
Kevin, it
Did
would
that
have,
come through?
it would have to be first thing Tuesday.
That's kind of
Hey, Dan.
timelines.
Can we do 9 o'clock on Tuesday?
Works for me.
I'd have to do like 10 o'clock on Tuesday.
You couldn't do 9 o'clock on Tuesday? I'm going back and forth. Dan?
Oh.
Hey,
Can't hear me.
Dan, can you do 9 o'clock on Tuesday?
Hang on, Kevin. I just lost my Zoom feed. I got to be in Paulsville at 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. I don't know what time I'd be back. I'm assuming 10 o'clock or later I could do on Tuesday. And then you and I meet at 2 o'clock in that afternoon.
10 o'clock works for me.
Yeah, 10 o'clock works for me.
Okay, let's plan on 10 o'clock on Tuesday.
All right. Yeah, my Zoom feed disconnected and it's trying to reconnect. So the phone is the only connection I have at the moment.
Progress.
So, and we'll plan for 1 hour.
Okay, 1 hour at 10 o'clock on Tuesday.
Got it.
Okay,
10 o'clock on Tuesday for an hour. Terrific. Anything else before we adjourn? All right. Thank you very much for your participation and have a good evening.
good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Good
Commissioners.
night.